I too want to thank the deputies, Catherine Connolly, Joan Collins and Tommy Pringle, for putting this motion, and I know that this debate is being keenly watched by people who are campaigning to ensure that our National Maternity Hospital is in public control. And I'm not very reassured myself by the statements this morning from the Minister. I mean, when you think about it, 3 years after the repeal referendum that ensured that we could finally access abortion services in this country, we're faced with the state-of-the-art promised new National Maternity Hospital being controlled and run by a religious order of the Sisters of Charity. Now, I cannot see, I don't know what sort of imagination the Minister has, but I cannot see how that would sit comfortable with them to provide abortion services, IVF treatment, vasectomy, which they refuse to provide at the moment, sterilisation and operations like gender realignment. I don't understand how the Minister can ensure us that at the same time that there's governance structures and, as he says in his own words, a legal framework being developed to protect the state's investment in the new hospital and to ensure that it remains in state ownership without religious, ethnic or other distinction. This is really difficult and confusing to understand or accept. We need our government to take the new National Maternity Hospital into public ownership, to own the land on which it sits and to control every aspect of it. So although they be spending nearly £1 billion or probably more when you look at the cost of the National Children's Hospital on the actual building, the government are saying they endorse this motion, but that is like asking us to trust them and to trust the Sisters of Charity. During the campaign to repeal the 8th Amendment, we constantly asked people to trust women, and I do trust women to make their own choices, but I cannot trust the Irish State, the Department of Health, with the record they have on reproductive health care, on women's rights. It's absolutely appalling. Whether you start with the mother and baby homes, the Magdalen Laundries, the X case, the Vita Halapanabar, the A, B, C, Y cases, women being forced abroad, the symphysiotomy scandal, cervical check, vaginal mesh, you name it. The Department of Health and this state have overseen some of the worst treatment of women and their health care. So if all the decisions are being made by the state in that hospital, then I want to point out to the Minister that there's some glaring contradictions in his contention. And at the end of this, I think we need agreement with the ministers concerned that this session on the motion, although it's hugely welcome and very, very important and timely, we actually need a longer debate where we can have questions and answers to the Minister on the specifics of this deal, because the specifics are being obscured, they're being glossed over, and the language is very worrying. And so I do think we need to demand that at the Business Committee, that we go through it. Look, there's disquiet about the ownership and the government and the ethos of the planned new maternity hospital for good reasons. New information has recently emerged that assurances given on the ethos in 2017 cannot be relied upon. The proposed facility, although it is expected to cost the taxpayer, will not be publicly owned, and the state will have no involvement in the private company that will run it. There is no way of compelling the new private company as planned to provide services that fly in the face of Catholic ethos. A 2019 government commissioned report on the role of voluntary organisation in publicly funded healthcare showed that it's premised on the fact that legally the state cannot compel private Catholic entities to provide services that are contrary to their ethos. And the nuns have yet to divest themselves of the assets. They still own the lands and in particular the site on which the hospital is planned to be built. According to the Catholic Church, abortion is one of the most serious crimes of all, and one must ask what precaution have been taken by the nuns to ensure that the services will be provided in the new National Maternity Hospital, which could undermine their own teaching. Legal instruments relating to ownership and governance structures, constitutions, licensing and licensing arrangements, and staff contracts and conditions are all aimed at enforcing the compliance with the ethos of the Catholic Church. And a clear statement of this ethos can be found in the hospital's job specification, which cites that the core values of the Religious Sisters of Charity under the new holding company, St Vincent's Holding, will set its healthcare delivery in a religious framework. Now, honestly, ministers, how do you expect us to trust you when we read this stuff? And it's, you know, in inverted commas, these are quotes. The St. Vincent's Holding Company directors are legally bound to uphold the ethos of the congregation. That is not my ethos. It's not the ethos of the vast majority of people in this country, and it is not the result that delivered us a massive change in this country with the referendum on repeal. So I think that coming out of this discussion, there can no longer be obfuscation and confusion about where we're going with this new National Maternity Hospital. I mean, if we're not going to sit down and have an honest debate and have the Minister really be forensically questioned about all of the issues around the contract, about the holding company arrangements, then we're going nowhere. We can't just fire statements back and forth here without that forensic questioning. And I'm extremely worried, like everybody else, that this is hurtling towards a conclusion, and the hospital deal will be done very, very soon. So I'm appealing to everybody in the House to demand that debate, that cross-party debate on how we can bring this forward.